Welcome back, fabricators. We are jumping back into some more tutorials. Tommy's back from vacation, so we're going to be a bit more reliable here with our videos. Welcome back, Tommy.
Thank you so much. It's good to be back.
It's good to be back. We're going to jump in today. We're going to start talking about how to customize the custom data set as it shows up inside the Fabric environment. So hopefully my screen will show here. And here we go. We're back into Fabric right now. So we're in our Fabric workspace. And you'll notice down here at the bottom of the screen, we have our 3 data elements that come with the creation of a data lake. We have the lake itself. This is the storage of the files. We have a SQL endpoint here in the middle section. This is the SQL endpoint that is provided to us. And then we have a default data set. The default data set comes with the lake and points to tables that are inside the lake as well. Now, things you can't do is you cannot edit the default data set in the lake itself. There is no edit or button in there to edit the data set. You actually must go into the SQL endpoint option, and that is where we'll do the editing. So we're going to begin our journey here in the SQL endpoint, pointing at all the tables at our lakehouse. So clicking on the icon or the words here for the Great Lake will take us directly into the SQL endpoint for engineering our data model. When I load or click on that button, you'll notice right away we have our SQL kind of view here. We have tables on the left-hand side. We have our navigation panel here on the left. What we really want to focus, though, is we want to focus on the ribbons at the top of the page. So we have 3 options here on different types of ribbons. The home ribbon, which is more around doing the SQL endpoint and data engineering and looking at writing SQL queries directly against the data set. But instead, we're actually going to focus on the reporting ribbon. That's the second one here in the list. Clicking on reporting, we'll be able to go over here and we can create a new default data set, which has been covered on a prior video. But we're going to focus here on this setting here for managing the default Power BI data set. This is the setting that we want to use here to go adjust what is in this default data set that you see inside the PowerBI.com portal. Clicking on the Manage Default Data Set, you'll first notice that you'll get a list of a window here with all the tables. So everything that you load directly into the lake, each table by name, these are all the tables that you look at inside the lake, you have the ability to turn them on or off. So for example, in this default data set, we're kind of focusing on some more of our baseball statistics and baseball data.
Of course.
So, of course, because Tommy, that makes Tommy happy there. So we've added a duplicate of a table here called batting, and we've added another table here called financial 01. So these two, technically, the batting is a duplication of the table above, so we don't really need that one. And then also the financial table here, 01, is just something I add arbitrarily just to give us an extra data table. So we're going to actually uncheck those 2 options. So unchecking those options like this, well, now it'll then only let our default data set select just these tables here directly from our lakehouse. I'll click confirm. And while it's doing this, it's actually dropping those tables out of the data model for me. And you'll notice too, again, another warning that came up to us earlier, if you see one of those checkbox items grayed out, it's likely because there's a measure inside that table. So if there's any measures in these tables, you cannot remove them. You have to first remove all the measures, and then you can go edit the tables. Now, it did something, but we really don't know what it did. So in order for us to see the design of the data model or the relationships between the various tables, we're actually going to go down here on the very bottom of the page, and you'll notice we have 3 buttons: data, writing queries against SQL, and we have the model icon down here below. By clicking on the model icon, we're now jumping into what I think Tommy and I would probably most likely say, this is the analysis services version of what we're looking at these tables. So this is where, again, my head is melting here a bit in this new world, because we're joining a lot of things that were very SQL-esque in nature, but we're also doing this against a lot of things that are very analysis services. So think of those 2 services, SQL Server and analysis services, with the modeling capabilities. We're actually joining these together. So I'm actually editing the BIM, or the definition of the report data model, here inside the service, which is super cool. You'll notice I already have all my tables here listed and aligned here. So if I expand my tables here, you can see that these are our data fields from below. And we have our people, our batting, and our other batting tables here. Now it looks like this has not been refreshed yet. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to see if I can refresh this data set here, because we removed those tables initially from the default data set. You'll notice that batting is still here and our financials 01 is still here. So the view has not been updated. It's been cached and not updated yet. So what I'll do is I'll see if I'll refresh the page. And hopefully those objects will be removed. Maybe not. Let's go back here to reporting. Let's go back here to automatically update the data set.
I believe there's another setting.
Am I missing something, Tommy, here?
Yeah, because I believe there's another setting if to automatically add new tables that are added to the default data set. And it usually does show up in the manage the default data set, but I'm not seeing it right now.
So I'm not sure what I did wrong earlier by unchecking those two items. So if I go back to my reporting, I manage my default data set. It's whining at me because I have removed these two tables and they are physically being represented in here. So what I'll do is I'll just add them back in so it doesn't give me any more errors. Previously, when Tommy and I adjusted this, it was actually allowing us to remove tables that we did not need or use anymore, and it would make them disappear. So let's go back here. Let's go back and look at the data set here. Okay. So there must be something else here going on. If you notice here on the all tables, we'll see everything here. And then you also see the default dataset objects being applied here. So let's do this one more time. We'll just go back through this one more time here. Manage the default dataset. I will turn off batting and financial, and I'll click confirm. Oh, this is interesting, Tommy. So what we're observing here is there's this concept of like all tables, and then there was the default dataset tables. So what we were looking at previously was all the tables, regardless of whether or not the dataset was there being applied. All right, so it looks like it did something. Default dataset objects. Let's just hide this one because we know this is no longer being used. Hide in report view. And then we will also, looks like our batting table is still here as well. So we'll hide this in our report view as well. So these two tables we have physically removed from the loading options. So we'll let those stay out for now. All right. Let's go back over here and let's collapse all of our data sets. We'll grab a people data set here, our pitching fact table, our batting table. We don't need this relationship anymore because we're not going to use this table. We'll delete that relationship and we'll use our years. So I'll pull these two other tables here off to the side because we don't technically want to reference them anymore. All right, so we'll focus here now what's left in the data set here. We have our people, our salaries, our pitching, and batting information. Now we do know we want to make some modifications here, but we'd also kind of like to observe how does this look inside Power BI Desktop as well. So now that we have the people table and our salaries and pitching, we can go over to Power BI Desktop as well. And if we click on the One Lake Data Hub option, or you could also use the down button, the bottom of the button of the Get Data option, you can go here to Power BI Data Sets and click there as well.
And it's really important, Mike, I think, to know when even in the default data set in the Lakehouse, it really is the same experience if you were creating a new, what a lot of people consider a new Power BI report and Power BI Desktop, creating measures, the models. So when we create our default data sets there, that's going to include all the measures and models, but they do not care if you create a new data set from that Lakehouse.
Correct. It's this the concept of it's almost like we have like these tables objects, and then you can define as many other combinations of those tables as you want off of what the lake is doing, which is kind of nice. So you'll see here, if I search for the Great Lake, that follows and finds our data set for our Great Lake. I'll click on this option. I'll click connect. So what this will now do is it'll now present that default data set. And here you'll notice in this list, you'll notice we now no longer see that extra batting table and the financial tables that we had previously. So even though I see it in the service, I don't technically see it here when I connect or live connect to that data set, which is kind of nice. So I'm able to connect the definition of the model, see my tables that I want to see here. And if I click on the model view, we'll also be able to observe the same thing we saw previously. So right click on one of the tables, collapse all options to make it easier for me to read. I will again move my fact tables towards the bottom because it's easier to read this way. And then I'll bring my people table here to the left. And we can again see our relationships are still there. And we still have our dimension table for our years. So to kind of bring this full circle, we want to show you how we can make changes in PowerBI.com and have them reflected inside our Power BI report. So we'll go back into our Fabric PowerBI.com SQL endpoint, and we'll go grab the definition or add more relationships to the years in each of our fact tables. So let me move out of desktop. We'll go back into the service here. And now that we're back into the PowerBI.com service, we can then open up all the tables down below. And then in each of these tables, we'll see at the very bottom list of all these items, we have the year ID at the very bottom. We will expand our year table, and we'll also have a year column here as well. So we will grab the year column and add it to our year ID. It will then do a cardinality check. It's going to ask me for how do you want the relationship to be made. It's going to be one item from the top and all items down here on the bottom items. Then next, what we'll do is we'll add a couple other relationships here as well. So I'll grab the year column again and add it to the year ID on the pitching table. Again, the same thing, adding a one-to-many relationship. And then finally, we'll do the last step on our batting table as well, going to the year ID as well here. So we'll go here to year ID as well and confirm this additionally. Now, if one thing I like to do when I'm building models or data tables, again, I like to keep my dimension tables to the top of the screen and then all my factual things down below. It also appears that Microsoft's having a bit of a hard time, rendering the different icons here. Can you see there's some relationships here? So be aware, these relationships are actually coming from here. I find that sometimes if I jiggle the tables a little bit or move them a bit closer together, sometimes Power BI can figure it out, but it looks like it's having some issues rendering those lines correctly. So if I hover over each of the connections, it's showing me the connections, but there's still some issues going on there with how they render those related connections. So just be aware of that as you're working with these models. All right, so we're done with this. This is the default data set. Now, as I make these changes, you'll also notice here, there's a warning message that sometimes appears. Every time you make a change, it's automatically saving your changes into this default data set. So what I can do now is I can go back down to Power BI Desktop. And now if I click refresh, this is on the home ribbon, the item under the queries area, clicking refresh, what this will do is it'll refresh the data set and bring in the next definition. And with that, boom, you can see right there's my definition. And another item I like to turn on here is pin all related fields to the top of the card. I will turn this on. And what we should see is all of the initial columns for year, player ID, and all of my items here relating themselves to the top of the data sets here. So I can see now all of the relationships and everything across all of my tables in this data set in desktop, which is kind of cool. We got a couple minutes left before this session. Let's do a quick measure. Tommy, what should we calculate here?
So I think we have batting. So why don't we do batting average, which is pretty simple. So all we're going to do is just a simple divide of our hits divided by ABs.
All right, so hits is going to be H, right? That's the definition of our hit column. So if we're going to do this, we're going to probably have to build this the correct way. So the first thing we probably want to do is an aggregation on the hits, right? First, Tommy. So we would already do our sum of hits.
Or we could do a sum X as well. So just iterate over each row in the table. So sum X.
Oh, okay. So it's a row level calculation you need to have. Okay. So let's do a sum X on that one. So we'll create a new measure. So I'll right click on the batting table. We'll create our new measure. And this is going to be what is this? This is our average of.
We'll just call it a batting average.
Batting average. See if it's let me do that. Okay, sum X. In our sum X formula, we're going to need to have our table name first called out initially. So we're going to go to the batting 01 table. That's where it's coming from. So we'll start typing the word batting for the table name. And then Tommy, give us the formula here again. So we're going to need the hits. Divide. We're going to do our divide statement.
With our H, so hits.
So batting 01 column named hits divided by.
And we're going to say ABs, which is at bats.
So the same table, batting 01 AB for our table. Close that off. Close out our parentheses there. And then hit enter. So this will then hopefully make our measure. It is not liking creating measures right now. Try this again. Let's go batting table again. Doesn't like me renaming the measure here for some reason. So we'll try it again. Divide our hits divided by our at-bats.
Oh, just copy that entire formula just in case.
Yeah, exactly right.
With ABs.
AB right there. Copy that parenthesis for divide. Close it off for our sum X. Let me Control A, copy that again. All right, so it seems to have liked the name called measure. Let's see if we can just rename it here one last time. Batting average. equals this. Let's see if it'll let me save it this time. Okay, looks like it took it this time. So a little bit buggy there. Looks like it's now capturing the batting average. And I guess, Tommy, we should also follow our standard kind of procedure here. If we're going to create a calculation, it probably makes sense for us to build a calculated folder. So on the right-hand side, I have the measure selected here called batting average down here below. And then I'm going to go over to the properties panel here on the far right-hand side, and I'm going to add it to a calculation folder. And I like putting an underscore underneath of it because the folder names will automatically be alphabetical. So by adding the underscore, it'll automatically bring the folder to the top of the table, and then all of my calculations would go inside that table. So I'll just type the word calculations with an underscore there. I'll click OK. And again, it should update my table, hopefully. It's thinking here. It's really trying hard to make an edit there.
We even have the form writing options as well. Usually batting average is actually 3 decimal places, and you should have that same ability even in the default data set.
So I would put that down here under the format, right, Tommy?
Yes. If there's a custom.
You need a custom one here. And then I think we have, what would you need? How do we do the decimal places on that one for this custom thing? Is it quotes that you're going to be using there?
So it's actually just going to be using the pound symbol to just show that we want to show 3 decimal places.
Okay, so pound and then 3 decimals. So we're doing a pound period, and then 3 commas right there, or 3 pound symbols there, and hopefully that'll grab us our correct batting average. All right, looks like it took it. Looks like we've got the right amount of information there. So all said and done, if this is going to work correctly for us, we should be able to go back over to Power BI Desktop. And then if we go into our batting table, we'll see that this information is not currently contained in this table. If I click the refresh on the data set again, we'll now see that our folder has appeared called calculations. Inside that folder, we open it up, and there we go. There's our batting average that we just recently applied. And if we go back over to report page, I guess what would be the best way to represent this, Tommy? If we have people already linked up here?
Yeah, so why don't we can do based on the full name, or
yeah, let's do that, full name.
Or we could just do the name given.
Do that one, well, name given, and then that should give us a list of all those individuals. There we go. And then we can then go grab from our batting table, we can go grab our calculation called batting average. Folder. And there we go. We now have a batting average for all years, for all periods of time. And since we also have a dimension for a year table, we could either grab our year group or year and add that to either the report table or somewhere else.
Yeah, we can even have this trending looking at batting average over the years.
So we can do something like this. We can now see our batting averages by year. Or if we want to put that on the same table, we could actually grab our year as well, and we'd be able to observe each year person by batting averages. So that's just a quick table. If you want to adjust that visual and pick a different visual, you go to the right-hand side of your screen and click on the visual, build a visual icon, and then you can then switch which visual you're looking at here. So you can then change it to a line chart or something else like that as well. You can then start adjusting your different axes there. So year would probably be on the X, or one of the axes here, X-axis. And then our batting average would be our Y-axis, and then the name of the individuals would be applied here as well. So go back to our data set. We'll grab our people, give a name, and add that to our legend. And if I unselect my year column here, we'll see batting averages all over the place. So easy way to build some visuals, easy way to build some calculations inside our values here. So we're able to create measures, we're able to build stuff inside the PowerBI.com service, and then have that quickly overlaid and rebuilt into visuals here as well. So let's get out of Power BI Desktop. We'll go back over to PowerBI.com service. That's kind of the introduction of being able to modify and manipulate that default data set. And now you can see that your default data set objects are here as well. You can build additional measures. You can create additional folders. A lot of the same experience you're going to find in desktop with doing data modeling, you're now going to start seeing those features appear inside Fabric as well. Any other things or observations, Tommy, you would cover off on here for other calculations and things?
I think the biggest things with the default data set, if you are going to create another data set off of that Lakehouse or SQL endpoint, the relationships and the measures do not carry over.
Well, that's a good point. Yes. So what we built here, it doesn't copy this and give you a new data set. When you click the button called New Power BI Data Set on this option here, It's basically letting you select the tables and you may build your own relationships again from scratch. And the measures don't carry over either. Good point. With that, we are all done with our Fabric demo. We'll head back over to our workspace, and that's it. Thank you very much for watching. We hope you enjoyed working with and manipulating the default data set. Be patient with the service. It looks like they're still getting some bugs worked out there as well. So we try to point out a couple of those bugs, let you see where those challenges are. But then working through that data set, you should be able to build your own default data sets and manipulate them for your needs. Thank you all very much, and we'll see you next time.